Good morning. Are you ready for math? Great. Don't run away screaming when you see the title of this page. We are going to um, tackle this together. We are going to review what it takes to round. Rounding decimals is not much different than rounding regular numbers without decimals. So we're going to review what it means to round. We're going to talk about decimals that mean the same thing and make sure that we can understand it when we look at them. And I'm going to do some of this together with you, okay? So this is the page you should have out, rounding decimals, and this is page 299. Page 299. Now, I want to talk about this first. So the first part where it talks about in the purple box there, and it says equivalent decimals. Equivalent means it's very similar to the word equal. So what you need to know about decimals is if you have a number and the whole and the digit is in the same place, okay, but everything after it is zeros, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, so look at the 8. The 8 is what we need to pay attention to. The 8 here is in the tens place. See that? It's in the first place after the decimal. Now look at the 8 over here. Is it in the same exact place? Yes, it is. Everything else is zeros, so it doesn't mean anything. So look, these numbers are the same. These would be equal. But look down here at these 8s. This 8 is in the tenths place, but where is this 8? Tenths, hundredths. This 8 is in the hundredths place. In this case, the 0 is in front of the 8, and that makes it important. That makes it a placeholder because it is moving that 8 to where it needs to be. So in this case, these numbers are not the same because this one would be 8 tenths, okay, in fraction language, and this one would be 8 over what? 100, okay, 8 100ths. So these numbers are not the same. In this case, they are. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at first as we go to this first section. So let's look at 1 through 8 together. Let me make this bigger. Good. Okay. So all we're doing here is, are they equal or are they not equal? You don't have to say greater than or less than, just equal or not, okay? So on number 1, look at where your 5 is. The 5 is in the tenths place. The 5 is in the tenths place. So it does not matter what zeros they have after it. The 5 is in the same exact place. So that number is equal. Look here. 8 is in the tenths place, but where is this 8? In the hundredths place. So this is not equal. I'm just going to put a slash. It's easier for me. Okay? 3, look at where the 4 is. 4 is in the tenths place here, but is it in the tenths place here? No, the 4 has scooted all the way to the thousandths place. So this is not equal. Look at the 6. Tenths, hundredths place, tenths. Not equal. This says 1.7. 1.7. 1 and 7 tenths. 1 and 7 tenths, or 70 hundredths, which would be the same. They would reduce. Remember how we reduce fractions and they become equal? You're doing the same thing here by getting rid of zeros. So this is equal because the 0 is in the back. And any 0 in the back, whoop, can drop off, can go away. Okay, now look at how this would be written. This is 2 and 80 hundredths. This is 2 and 8 hundredths. Not equal. 3 tenths. Is this 3 tenths? Yep. So these are equal. 7 and 1/100ths. That 1 is in the hundredths place. Where is the 1 over here? In the hundredths place. We just have a 0 that needs to go away. So these are equal. Okay, got that? Zeros on the back, get rid of them. Drop them away, okay? But if they are in front of a digit, they're important. They can stay, okay? So 9 through 12 says write the equivalent decimal in hundredths. So all that means is that your decimal has to have 2 places after it. That would be tenths, hundredths. So how do I write an equivalent decimal for this in hundredths? What do I add? I add a 0. Because if I want to make it have a hundredths, I can put that 0 there and I'm not changing the fraction at all. It makes an equivalent decimal. Okay, so same thing here. I'm going to keep that 3. Oops, that's a 3. But add a 0 after it. So that way I've got my hundredths place, but I'm not changing the meaning at all. Now this one, I'm not going to do the same thing. Now I have too many zeros. I have a thousandths. So I'm going to get rid of that last 0 and keep the 1 before it. And I'm going to do the same thing here, because I want to keep it a hundredths. Okay? All right, now on this one, it says, mark on the number line the location of the decimal. Round the decimal to the nearest hundredth. So they want you to see why you're rounding, okay, and where it lands. So if this is 7 and 236 thousandths, it is going to be between 7 and 230 and 7 and 240. Let's reduce that a little bit, okay? So it was 236. So here's 230. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's 235. Your decimal is going to go right there. And that's all you have to do is mark it on the number line. Okay? So let's go back here. So it's going to round to, if it's past that 5, okay, and I want to round this to the nearest hundredth. So this is the place I want to end. So I'm going to round up. It's not closer to 7 and 23 hundredths. It's closer, it's on the other side. So it's closer to 7 and 24 hundredths. Okay? Now look here, 5 and 352 thousandths. We want to know, is it closer to 35 hundredths or 36 hundredths? So I want to find it. 31 or 51, 52. It's closer this way, isn't it? So it's going to go to 5 and 35 hundredths. Now let's go back and review our rounding quickly. So here's our rounding reminder. This is what we said when we needed to round. Find the place. Now this is really important. A lot of times we skip this, we forget this step. But this is the most important thing because you have to know your place value. If it says round to the tens place, that's what you do first. You find the place. So if I want to take this number and round to the tens place, find the place. I'm going to underline it. Find the place. Look next door. So I'm going to look this way, to the right. Look next door. 5 or higher, raise the score. Okay, so is that 5 or higher? Yes. So then I'm going to go back to the underlined number and change that to a 7. 5 or higher, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Numbers in front stay the same. That's what I did. Everything in front of that underline stayed the same. Look at the last part. Numbers behind zeros their name. So that means that anything after this underline gets a 0. Sometimes I see mistakes in rounding when kids forget to put the zeros behind, or the biggest mistake is not remembering to keep the numbers in front. You'll write 70 instead of 5,770. You need to keep the whole number intact. So let's say our steps again. Find the place. Underline it. Look next door. 5 or higher, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. That means leave that underlined number the same. Numbers in front of the underline stay the same. Numbers behind of the underline, zeros their name. Okay, so see how important that underline is at the beginning? You want to find your place and underline it. Now, let's look back at your page. Round the decimal to the nearest tenth. Okay, so the nearest tenth is the place right after the decimal, right? So we want to find our place. That's the 7. Look next door. 5 or higher. Is it 5 or higher? Raise the score. Raise the score of this number. Okay, so that means everything in front stays the same. That 7 goes up to an 8. And then remember the last part. Everything behind zeros their name. Well, here's what's different with decimals. You don't need to add the zeros in the back because remember what I just said? The zeros don't mean anything. So if it is behind a decimal, then you can just change that one number and drop everything else behind it away. Okay, let's do this one. Same 10th place. Find the 10th place. Look behind. Oh, it's a 5, so that means this 8 is going to go up. So that means I have to keep everything else the same. The 8 goes up to a 9, and then anything behind it drops off. Okay, look at the 10th place here. That's the 3. Look behind, it's a 1. So that means this 3 is going to stay the same with everything in front of it. 10.3. Okay, 10th place. 4. Look behind it. 6. Uh-oh, what does that tell us? The 4 is going to go up, and everything behind drops off. 10th place. The 2. Look behind. It's a 3. So then that 2 is going to stay the same. Okay, now I compare. Are these greater, less than, or equal? Okay, so this is 27 and 1/10. That means I have 1 out of 10 pieces. This is 27 and 1 out of 100. So do you want one piece out of something that's cut into 10? Or do you want one piece that's cut into something that's cut into 100? What's bigger? This one's bigger, right? If it's only cut into 10 pieces, then it's bigger. Look at this one. 8. They both have an 8 as the whole number. So let's look at the back part. Do I want 345 or 349? 349 is bigger, right? Okay, look behind. Now, let's take this as the full number. So look behind the 0 and look at the full number there and look at the full number here. Okay, the full number behind the 0 here is 53. The full number here is 140. So what's bigger? The 140, isn't it? Okay. Now, look at this one. I've got a 3 in the 10th place and a 3 in the 10th place and then zeros. So that means that these two are going to be equal because the digit is in the same place. We just have those extra zeros. All right, word problem. Mrs. Crawford bought 2.5 pounds of potatoes. Mr. Crawford bought 2.5 pounds of potatoes. Who bought more potatoes? Okay, so let's do this. 2.5, and let's make 2.5, so that would be 2 5/10. What does 5/10 mean? It's a half, isn't it? So who bought more? Neither. So on that, you're going to say they bought the same. They bought the same. All right, so the back. This is exactly what we did on the front because they're still having you round it to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so the hundredth is the second place. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Okay, so they want you to look there, find it on the line. 105, there would be 107. So it rounds up, doesn't it? To 4 11 hundredths. So find 893 here. 893, it stays the same. 3 and okay. Now, on these, you're practicing your rounding again. You're rounding to the nearest tenth. That means you're going to underline the number right after the decimal. Okay? And on this one, round the number to the nearest whole number. That means your underline is going to be on the very first number before the decimal. And then you're not going to have a decimal. So let's look at 31 together. If I'm going to round it to a whole number, I start with 5. I look behind it. That's a 4. Not high enough, is it? So the 5 stays the same, and there is no decimal now. Everything else behind it drops away because I'm only rounding to a whole number. Circle the digit in each of these places, so make sure you're paying attention to the THs there. Okay, and this one is not a TH, tens place. So circle the digit. Write the equivalent value. So 4/10 would be 40 hundredths. This is what's in the tenths place, 6/10. And then if I go to the hundredths place here, what's there? 70 hundredths. What's all of it in front? And then thousandths is 200. Okay, these you're going to write in word form, so read it to yourself. Remember, the decimal word is and. Okay, and these all have decimals, except you don't need to start with and on this one because there is no whole number, or this one. But this one is going to say 5 and 25 hundredths, right? This one will be 23 and 1/10. Now you're going to write these out. 16 hundredths and 548 thousandths. Now, write the decimal in standard form. That means in numbers. They have written it out for you, and you're going to write it in the decimals. Okay? And then write the fraction in decimal form. Practice that. Remember, we did this yesterday. For every digit, there needs to be a 0. And if that's the case, you don't have to add any zeros. So 74 hundredths is just going to look like this. 74 hundredths. And then you're going to do the same here. Now, I am going to do this one with you because I want you to know that when it has a 2 in front of the decimal, that's just a whole number. That's showing that you're going to write a mixed number now. 2 and 53 hundredths. Now, look at the word problem. Christopher made 4 bookmarks from a long strip of paper. The bookmarks measured 8.2, 6.3, 7.0, 9.4. How long was his strip of paper before he made the bookmarks? So how am I going to figure that out? I'm going to add them all, right? But make sure you line up your decimals. So it's going to be 8.2, and then you're going to write right under that 6.3, 7.0, and 9.4. Okay, go back and fill in all of the blanks that you need, and in the comments below, I want you to make up your own number with a decimal, and I want you to write the number in standard form, so in numbers, and then I want you to write it in word form for me. It doesn't have to be one from this page. You can just make one up. So it can be, you can write 8 decimal 2, and then you can write 8 and 2 tenths in written out words. Okay, I want the decimal, and I want you to write it in word form. Any decimal you pick. Okay?